Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Bradford series. Bradford is a hugely important city in West Yorkshire. A lot of it is unparished, but there are 20 of them here, so let's dive into one of them today. Welcome back to Bradford, people. Now today, it's a very cold morning. It's about, what do we reckon, about?
-4.
-4? -4? As cold as that?
-4,
Blimey. There's plenty of snow on the hills around this place. If I can just show you.
Hang on.
Nikki sticks out of the way. You can see we've got some snow and ice and things on the hill. We came through some patches of fog to get here this morning. It was quite difficult actually, but it's worth it because this place is one I've been looking forward to for a long time, and I know Nikki has as well. Welcome to Bronte country. This is Haworth, Roads and Stanbury. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Welcome to the often mispronounced Haworth, a village located within the boundaries of the City of Bradford. Situated in the Pennines, it's 3 miles southwest of Keighley. Haworth is first recorded as a settlement in 1209. Its name may refer to a hedged enclosure or hawthorn enclosure. It was recorded as Howorth on a 1771 map. The surrounding areas include Oakworth and Oxenhope. Nearby villages include Lumbfoot, Roads and Stanbury, the latter two of which form the parish of Haworth, Roads and Stanbury. Haworth is a tourist destination, best known for its literary association with the Bronte family, most notably the 19th century authors Emily, Charlotte and Anne, and their father Patrick. In fact, pretty much everywhere you look out here, you'll find something Bronte related. Even the preserved heritage Keighley and Worth Valley Railway, also here, is linked to the family. Haworth is much more than just a haven for fans of the sisters and their writings though. There's the annual Haworth Arts Festival, for example, which has provided a stage for the likes of John Cooper Clarke and John Shuttleworth in the past, and every year the village hosts a 1940s weekend where locals and visitors don wartime attire for a host of nostalgic events. This is the lovely Haworth, Roads and Stanbury. Let's get walking.
If you got star cards like this, then you won't.
Our route begins on Station Road at a roundabout where it meets Bridge House Lane. This is the B6142, the main road through the village, which we'll see constantly. The main industry in Haworth was the production of worsted yarn and cloth. That there is Bridge House Mills, the biggest factory it once had. It stands just off the roundabout, as does this, the Haworth War Memorial. This is for World War I only, and it bears exactly 100 names, all of whom were lost in conflict. Haworth has quite a number of shops, too many to catch them all. Also on the roundabout, there's one of its biggest, a co-op supermarket. Haworth is located in the Worth Valley. Here we cross a watercourse, Bridge House Beck, which flows north, reaching the River Worth at Oakworth. Straight after the bridge, we took a right turn onto Belle Isle Road. These are Belle Isle Apartments, which overlook the beck and the nearby railway. So far it's been quite flat, but it's now going to start getting hilly. As you can see, Nikki and Hannah are halfway up this hill. It's a very steep hill, so yeah. It's going to be interesting. There's plenty of hills on this route. We're heading towards the Bronte parsonage eventually. It'll be quite a way away yet, but there are signs for it. It's a big tourist attraction in this part of the world. Let's see what else we can find before we get there. In the centre of Haworth is Central Park, which has maintained the coveted Green Flag Award, the national award for parks and green spaces, since 2006. The park has been here since 1929. It's built on land which was sold by the Emmett Rawdon estate to Haworth Urban District Council. It cost £11,000 to build. There's a Friends of Haworth Park group who are always constantly working to improve the park and have recently refurbished its bandstand. After a walk through the park, we're at the junction of Rawdon Road and Bridge House Lane. Over the way is the foot of Main Street. We're heading for that in a moment. First though, we have Hall Green Baptist Church. In the late 1700s, Baptists in the area used to meet in a barn at the bottom of Brow Road before this was built. Haworth has many more independent retailers than it has chain stores. Onto Hall Street via Sun Street, we find a good example. This is a local butcher's, GN Meats. So Nikki and Hannah are going to shortcut the route a little bit here. They're going to go and wait at the bottom of the high street where there's a phone box. I'll meet them there in a moment, while I deal with Weaver's Hill, which will take me up towards an old quarry and then down a footpath which will lead back to the high street. Let's go and talk about this bit. Given Haworth's history of yarn and cloth, it's no surprise that there are many references around the place to weaving. This is Weaver's Hill, which takes us up to a car park. Because it's a touristy location thanks to the Bronte sisters, there's more than a few car parks knocking about, as you might expect. This one is built on the former Bankfield Quarry. This was sometimes known as Jagger's Quarry, owing to the fact it was owned by two brothers with the surname Jagger. When it was active, the quarry was one used to provide stone for the building of some local reservoirs. Stick around until the end, we've got one of those to see later. These days it's Weaver's Hill Car Park, and it's quite a large one as car parks go. Coach companies who operate tours to Haworth regularly use this car park. It's high up on a hill too, so if you know where to go, you can get a great view over Haworth and the surrounding hills. Luckily, I found the perfect spot. So from the car park you can walk down to the high street, which is what I'm about to do. This is not the best footpath in the world, and it's obviously snowy and icy here, so I've got to be careful. But when we get to the bottom, we'll reconvene with Nikki and Hannah, and then we'll head up into Haworth High Street. Now for a walk up Main Street, a long cobbled hill which has no end of things of interest. This board, dated 1937, tells you a few of them. Tourism accounts for much of the local economy here, with the major attractions of course being the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway and the Bronte Parsonage Museum. However, I recommend taking the time to explore the shops. There's quite a number of tea rooms, antiquarian bookshops, restaurants, pubs and hotels here. From 1971 until 1988, 25 and 27 Main Street housed Haworth Pottery, where Anne Shaw produced hand-thrown domestic stoneware. Her pieces were exhibited widely in the UK and USA in both public and private exhibitions. Her husband, Robert Shaw, depicted life in the village in the 1970s and 80s in two collections of satires, 1981's Rath Valley Anthology and 1988's Grindley Bairns, both of which were praised by the Times Literary Supplement. So a cobbled street is something we don't see all the time. It makes a change to see one of these.
Cobbled street with this kind of hill you don't see all the time.
This is quite steep compared to the one I've just come down. Sorry. Not as steep as the one I've just come down, is what I meant to say.
It's lovely though, and do you know what, the houses and the businesses here are just fabulous. I love it. I'm in heaven.
Well, it only gets better a bit further up, apparently. We continue up the hill, passing Abraham's Gallery on the way. This had some lovely pieces of artwork featuring scenes from all around Haworth. One of the most depicted scenes in the village is this view of Main Street looking downhill from various points along its length. Isn't it just gorgeous? It's not long before some things Bronte related start to come into view. Here's Wuthering Arts, for example, which obviously takes its name from Wuthering Heights. That book is almost certainly the one that's the most referenced in Haworth. Here's a good example. Almost at the top of the hill we have the Hawthorn, which was the family home of the clockmaking Barracloughs. Mosley Barraclough was the name of one of the characters in the novel, a fact displayed on this board outside. And we've hit the top. The hill might be a climb, but in truth it's gentle. It's nothing compared to some of the hills we take on later in this video, that's for sure. Now, of course, it's still fairly early in the morning here, so not many shops are open, but they will be later. And these two have decided that they're going to walk down this street again later. I won't be, because I'll be heading somewhere else. So while I'm doing that, they're going to have a little mooch in some of these shops and see what they can find. There's some cracking shops. This one's called Cabinet of Curiosities. Is this like a little vintage shop, Nikki?
No, it's like a niche products shop.
Niche products.
Yeah.
Do you know what? It reminds me of Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? It's very similar to some of the shops you'd see on Diagon Alley. Next, we take a look at the Church of St Michael and All Angels, situated at the top of Main Street, where it meets West Lane and Church Lane. The current structure is the third church building on this site, built between 1879 and 1881, although parts of the original medieval church building still survive, including its tower. Interestingly, John Wesley was known to have preached in a church here many times in the 18th century, but this church is best known for its historic association with another religious figure, Patrick Bronte, the father of the Bronte sisters, who served as minister of the parish between 1820 and 1861. The Bronte family vault is located under the church. Next to it we have another Bronte-related building, the old schoolhouse, dating from 1832. Patrick Bronte was instrumental in founding this, and 4 of his 6 children, Charlotte, Emily, Anne and Branwell, all taught here. So the church isn't open yet. It opens at 10 o'clock on Saturdays. It's about 9:15 at the moment. So no problem, because we will be swinging back past the church later, and Nikki will go in and show you, hopefully, the Brontes' graves. There's also the parsonage to talk about, which is this way. Arguably, the most famous building in Haworth, owing to its connection to the Brontes, is the parsonage, which was built between 1778 and 79. It wasn't until 1820, though, that Patrick Bronte arrived here with his wife Maria and 6 children. Even though the Bronte sisters lived and wrote most of their novels here, they were actually born in Thornton, also within Bradford. It was the family home for the rest of their lives, and its moorland setting had a profound influence on the writings of Charlotte, Emily and Anne. Writing was already in the family's blood, because Patrick himself was already a published author of poetry and fiction. The parsonage is now a museum, owned and maintained by the Bronte Society, a registered charity and one of the oldest literary societies in the English-speaking world. I suppose I've got to keep fans of different things happy as well here, so as such I couldn't resist this. There's a patch of allotments in front of the parsonage. So Nikki and Hannah have left me again. They've gone to make their graveyard video around the church before it opens at 10 o'clock, and then they're going to go and have a hot drink in one of the cafes that's open on the high street. In the meantime, I am heading along this footpath to West Lane, which will form a neat little loop which will come back round these houses here back towards the church and the parsonage, and by that time the church should be open, so we'll be able to see the Brontes' graves. This next part of the route was simply incredible, if you like beautiful scenery, that is. You'll get an idea from this as to why the surroundings were so influential to the works of the Bronte sisters. This footpath takes us across some private fields, but as long as you keep to the path, you're all good. It runs to West Lane. The hills and valleys only get better the more you walk through them. A little later, we'll venture further out into them and you'll see what I mean. This ain't half bad though, to be honest. I was surrounded by gorgeous snow-capped hills everywhere I looked, an absolute feast for the eyes. At the end of the path there's a bus stop. 3 buses stop here, one of which is the B1, which is even called the Bronte bus. The K14 and K16 are the others. Off West Lane as we make our way back, you'll come across the entrance to Haworth Cricket Club. Covered in snow, trust me, it's down there somewhere. It's a veritable winter wonderland out here at the moment. Now, on the track that leads down to the cricket club, there's a house which has got a name which has just made me laugh. And I'm sure it's going to make you laugh as well. That's what it's called. West Lane runs back to Main Street. On the way, we pass quite a few pubs. For starters, we've got the Old Sun Inn, formerly known as the Old Sun Hotel. This is a popular pub because it's only a few minutes walk away from the parsonage. I love this little wishing well at its front entrance, by the way. Nice touch. A few steps away is a Baptist church, which has stood here since 1752 and was enlarged in 1775. It's still active as well. West Lane then turns right and we're back on the cobbles again. There's more pubs along here because this used to be a turnpike which ran from Bradford to Colne. It passed the front door of the Blue Bell, which is now called the Old White Lion. This was once owned by J and R.R. Thomas, wine and spirit merchants in the Bronte era. They also owned the Cross Inn opposite the church gates. Almost directly over the cobbles is another pub, the King's Arms, and its history is on its wall. So there's a bit of history here about the King's Arms as well. The King's Arms history goes back to the 17th century. The property belonged to the Lord of the Manor and was sold in 1763. In 1841, Enoch Thomas, the innkeeper, was a good friend and confidant of Branwell Bronte. A later landlord, Joseph Fox, was a confectioner by profession and provided the fare for Emily Bronte's funeral feast. In 1876, the Loyal Order of the Ancient Shepherds was formed as the King's Arms, and one of its members was the longest serving landlord. His name was John Hartley, and he died in 1907, having been there for 47 years. For a considerable period, the cellars were also used by the village undertaker as a mortuary, and the rear of the inn was a slaughterhouse. Its gruesome past has led many to believe the King's Arms to be haunted. So here's the cafe where Nikki and Hannah were hiding out, having a hot drink. The Villette Bakery shop I can recommend. It's very nice. Just come out of the way of this car. You bought a few things from in there, Nikki, haven't you?
I got 2 things.
2 things?
Nice.
Okay, what have we got?
I got my favourite, which is blackcurrant preserve. So
Okay.
that is mine.
Okay.
And I got something for you, which I know you will like, which is gooseberry preserve.
Yeah, that is definitely mine.
Yeah,
No one else
I
is
think they were
touching
about three something, 350, 395, something like that.
Good.
So yeah, but looks, and it says here on there, Main Street, Haworth, so obviously made here.
Okay. Right, the church bells are tolling in the background. That means it's 10 o'clock and the church is open. So let's go and find the graves of the Brontes. Now, Nikki has already made a Mrs. TVI episode about the Bronte graves. It's linked below if you haven't seen it. These shots from inside the church all come from that video, showing you the Bronte-related things in the church and where the Bronte vault is located.
About the church and burial and marriage records, and this one a Bible, formerly chained to the pulpit of the old parish church of Haworth near Keighley.
So here we go. The Bronte family vault is situated below this pillar, near to the place where the Bronte's pew stood in the old church. And down here we have
A bronze memorial stone.
yeah,
Memorial
memory of
tablet.
Emily and Charlotte.
So here's a little family chapel, and there you go, that is the memorial tablet for the Reverend Patrick Bronte and all the family who were buried beneath us. And then you've got an altar here, and then on the side of Andy, a memorial stone for Elizabeth Bramwell. So we're just going to pop a donation in as well towards the church upkeep. So 5 of your English pounds is going in there. Thank you very much to the eye.
Okay, so we've just come back out of the church. Oh, the bells are ringing.
Yeah, for 11:30.
Brilliant.
Nearly dinner time.
Yeah, nearly. So we wanted to just talk a little bit about the sisters outside, because it's quite quiet in the church. Didn't want to
Disturb anybody.
Yeah. So what do you want to say, Nikki?
Well, I was just going to sort of say about, you know, that there's Emily who was pregnant, wasn't she, when she died?
I think it was
Emily?
Charlotte, wasn't it? I think it was
Let
Charlotte.
me check. I've got some notes here. Okay, right, so...
Preparedness is key.
Absolutely.
I think it was Charlotte who was pregnant.
Right, yeah. Emily was died from a severe cold that turned into tuberculosis. And Charlotte was pregnant at the time, and she died 3 weeks before her birthday. Her death certificate lists the cause of death as consumption.
Whatever that is.
Well, it's like a sort of a severe like morning sickness, but not necessarily associated with pregnancy.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay.
And she was buried with a unborn child.
And of course, the one Bronte sister who's not here is Anne.
Yeah, she's in Scarborough.
In Scarborough, somewhere.
Yeah, died also of tuberculosis.
So.
And it was quite interesting with Anne, because they thought that she was actually getting better. Because out there in Scarborough, the sea air was improving things, but then she got sick again and sadly passed away.
And never came back.
No, because her sisters didn't want her to come. Wanted her to, what was it? How did they put it? To be buried where she died, or to be or something along those lines.
As you leave the church, you'll see a set of stocks which date back to at least the 1850s, but are thought to go back much further than that. They recently got their own blue plaque. Now we're making our way towards Ebor Lane for our next major landmark, leaving this gorgeous cobbled street behind. It's such a lovely place to be. A footpath links us to Heathcliff Mews, which is where the local surgery can be found, just off Rawdon Road. Crossing the road, you have Haworth's Primary School. This is the only school in the village. Secondary school children attend Beckfoot Oakbank in Keighley and Parkside School in Cullingworth. A right turn then takes us down Mytholm's Lane, a generally residential area of Haworth which leads to Oakworth. And then we turn right again onto Ebor Lane as we head for a massive old mill. On the way, we pass Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Church. Okay, 2 more sections on this main walk, the first of which of course is the mill, which we'll talk about in a moment, and the last thing is the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway Station here in Haworth. I'm not going to touch too much on that because I'll be focusing more on that in the Oxenhope episode, which is coming at you next after this one. So let's get to the mill, and that's right here. Ebor Mill was first built by Hiram Craven and his two sons Thomas and Hiram Jr. in 1819. Construction included a dam on Bridgehouse Beck to facilitate a water wheel in order to power a worsted spinning mill. The mill and the adjacent Ebor house were purchased by the Merrill family in the 1850s. The Merrills greatly expanded the site, including in 1887 the addition of a 6-storey 19-bay mill designed by W and J.B. Bailey of Bradford and Keighley. However, that building no longer stands because it was demolished after a fire in 2010. Prior to the fire, the site was occupied by Airedale Springs Limited. A long-established firm, Airedale Springs had been here since the late 1980s. They moved out and now operate from Bridgehouse Lane. The Ebor Mill site is now residential, covering almost 3 acres. It has 2 Grade 2 listed mill buildings and a Grade 2 listed boiler house within its cobbled courtyard. And after walking up the hill from the mill, it brings you to this road here, where there's a few more shops and things, a few more takeaways. There's a laundrette on the corner there, it's a Chinese takeaway, a few other bits and bobs. Haworth Beauty there, pharmacy, there's a hardware store, and in the very far distance you can see a railway station. That's the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway, and that's our last stop. This is the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway, a heritage railway line which runs from Keighley to Oxenhope, and even this has links to the Brontes. This is the only complete heritage railway in the UK to be preserved and operating. It has a large collection of both steam and diesel locomotives and vintage carriages. Here we're outside Haworth Station, which features perhaps the biggest Victorian postbox I've ever seen just outside it. Nikki stood next to it for size comparison. So how does this railway link to the Brontes? Well, in 1861, John McLansborough, a civil engineer, visited Haworth to pay tribute to Charlotte Bronte. He was surprised to find that it was not served by a railway, so he proposed a branch line running from the Midland Railway Station at Keighley to Oxenhope. The line served 3 small towns and 15 mills along its length. It opened in 1867, remained in operation until 1962, and became a heritage railway in 1968. Now, as I said earlier, I'm not going to touch too much on this here because this line runs, as you can see, to Oxenhope, which is the next village down, and that's the next episode you'll see in this Bradford series. And as you can see, the next train is heading towards Oxenhope, so we will pick up the line again at that station. For now though, I'm going to go back out through the station. Where are you, Nikki? Are you there? Sorry, they went to look in the shop. Through the station and then head back this way to where the car is parked, and that is the main walk around Haworth. But of course, this is not just Haworth, this is Haworth, Roads and Stanbury. So we need to talk a bit about them, don't we? Well, let's hop in the car and drive around them both. Our drive starts by heading up into Crossroads, or if you will, Crossroads with Lees, or even Crossroads cum Lees. This is just to the northeast of Haworth. This is not necessarily a village, but a collection of small hamlets. Lees, Barcroft, Bocking, Bingley Road and Crossroads. Together they are regarded collectively as one village. Crossroads is named literally after a crossroads, which these days is a roundabout. We're heading for that now. As we do, keep your eyes on the left of your screen. By doing so, you'll see the Crossroads Inn, supposedly a regular haunt of Branwell Bronte, who was a painter as well as a writer and Patrick Bronte's only son. Crossroads also has 2 other pubs and a large park, the rather imaginatively named Crossroads Park no less, which has boasted many local sports clubs in its time. These included both football teams and cricket teams, but today only Crossroads Bowling Club exist, and they play their matches on the park's bowling green. Leaving Crossroads behind, we're now taking a drive towards Stanbury, following the A6033 and then the B6142 as it runs back through Haworth towards the Sladen Valley. This is actually quite a long way because you have to cross Bridgehouse Beck. I opted to go via Bridgehouse Lane. I don't recommend Ebor Lane, folks, it's quite narrow. Once through Haworth, you're on West Lane again, which winds its way through some beautiful countryside, up and down a few hills, into Sladen Bridge. Technically a part of Stanbury, Sladen Bridge is a small hamlet which consists of a row of terraced houses close to Sladen Beck, and a few isolated properties as well. Beyond Sladen Bridge, you'll pass a cemetery on your right. Haworth's main cemetery isn't far away either, it lies just to the south on a different road. Once upon a time, the Sladen Valley was a lot different to how it is today, and that's thanks to the local water features, one of which we'll see shortly. And now we're driving into Stanbury, a small village to the west of Haworth, which has more than its fair share of Bronte-related features. One of those is the Bronte Falls, located in the valley below the village itself. There's even a pub here called the Wuthering Heights Inn, referring of course to Emily Bronte's 1847 novel. Despite the name, it actually predates the Brontes by quite some margin. It was built in 1763 and used to be known as the Cross. Speaking of names, Stanbury is Old English and it translates to mean literally stone fort. It has an Anglican church built in 1848. In 1998 it was named St Gabriel's after spending the previous 150 years without a name. There's also a primary school and a second pub within the village called the Friendly. Just outside Stanbury is a third pub called the Old Silent Inn, formerly known as the Eagle, which is over 400 years old. And perhaps one of the best places to look at Stanbury Village is from the reservoir, which is just to the south of it. So we're going to have a quick look at this. We haven't seen a reservoir for a while, so let's see what we can talk about with this one. We'll go across this wall and have a little look at it. It is as still as a mill pond at the moment. It's not frozen, although it is quite cold, so I'm surprised it's not frozen. There's a bit of ice here, but generally speaking it's
yeah, the birds are still swimming.
Yeah, they're not skating, they're swimming. So yeah, let's have a little bit of a talk about this. Just south of Stanbury is Lower Lathe Reservoir, which sometimes gets referred to as Sladen Valley Reservoir. It's right next to Sladen Valley Water Treatment Works after all. Opened in 1925, it was built to supply Keighley and its environs with water, and it wasn't the only one around here to do so. There are some more, which we will encounter. The reservoir dams Sladen Beck, taking water directly from the surrounding moorland, including a stream that flows over the Bronte Falls. We'll get to those shortly. The construction of the reservoir required the abandonment of the hamlet of Smith Bank. Stone for it was sourced from Dimple's Quarry, which is now abandoned and within the nearby Penistone Hill Country Park. A narrow gauge railway was used to transfer material from the quarry to the dam head. Whilst the surrounding moorland is noted for its bird life, there are very few birds which actually live on the reservoir, although some, like the shelduck, are frequent visitors here. And if you come to Stanbury, you might find yourself on this bridleway, which, by the way, gives you this awesome view. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? Isn't it fabulous, girls?
Gorgeous.
Brilliant. And if you're on this bridleway, you can take a 15-16 minute walk down to the Bronte waterfall and the stone seat where they wrote some of their stories. We're going to go and find that next. To finish with, we're off to find the Bronte Falls. We're on part of the 43-mile-long Bronte Way, which long-time viewers may remember begins at Gawthorpe Hall in Burnley. The views up here are absolutely staggering. We were in awe of the area we were in. Be careful though, in the snow and ice, this isn't an easy walk. If you head into the valley, you'll come to the Bronte Falls, the Bronte Bridge, and the Bronte Stone Chair, in which it's said the sisters took turns to sit and write their stories. Also along the route of the Bronte Way is Pondon Hall, reputedly Thrushcross Grange in Wuthering Heights, and the eponymous mansion in Anne Bronte's The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. On the route too is Top Withens, also Wuthering Heights related. It's a desolate ruin which was reputedly the setting for the Earnshaw family house. The bridge you'll find at the falls is not the original, as it was destroyed in a flash flood in 1989 and rebuilt in 1990. The watercourse it crosses here is South Dean Beck. And perhaps the best place to end any video made in Haworth, Crossroads and Stanbury is at a pub which mentions the name of one of the Bronte novels. That's the Wuthering Heights Inn here in Stanbury. I'll just show you it out the window. It's not quite open yet because it's not quite 12 o'clock. But we're going to go in there and have some food. And that, I think, is that. I don't know about you, dear, but I think I've thoroughly enjoyed my morning here in Haworth. Have you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've had to, you know, do the doubling back thing for the church and what have you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I agree. This is a good place to end a video. But to be fair, anytime you end a video in a pub is a good thing. So yeah, we'll go and have some lunch and refresh ourselves, ready for the next one.
Yeah, Oxenhope, which will come at you in 2 weeks' time as opposed to 1 week's time, because obviously the Bradford series is now alternating with other stuff to give me time to film it, because obviously most of the stuff out here is really big and I can't film more than sort of 2 at once. So yeah, Oxenhope is the next one coming your way very soon. But for now, this has been the parish of Haworth, Crossroads and Stanbury, and I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.